Hey guys, today, this week's lesson we're going to look at is the parts of the sentence, and I've tried to do this a couple of times, so we'll see how it goes. So grammar in this class, we're going to do like one unit at a time, one unit per week, and it's going to start out pretty simple, going over things that you probably even think are too basic, like parts of the sentence. But we're quickly going to move into fragments, run-ons, complex sentences, compound complex sentences, things like that. So to do those things, though, we need to make sure you know the parts of the sentence. So the way that I like to think about the parts of the sentence is think about it like a sports team, okay? And you've got two teams. You've got your team that is with your action verbs, and you have your team that is with your linking verbs. And just like in the middle of a game, players don't trade teams. Same thing here. Players stay with their team. So if it's a team action verb, it's going to always be with an action verb, never with a linking verb. And those players are direct objects, indirect objects, and object complements. Do notice a couple of things. First of all, action verbs are actions, right? Eat, sleep, jump, pray. So these are action verbs. Do notice that our players will never be in prepositional phrases. That's true of both types of verbs. And we're going to talk about the replacement test later, okay? So let's look at an example. Direct objects. So remember, action verbs are verbs that show action, obviously, okay? Direct objects often accompany them and they will answer the question, what? They won't be in a prepositional phrase, and we'll look at, like the way I like to explain it is the arrow goes forward, okay? So when we're looking at and we're thinking about, sorry, just a second, and we're thinking about direct objects, think about starting at the verb and going forward. We're going to pass the ball forward to a direct object. So let's look at the first one, okay? I did my homework. What's the action? Did. Who did? Subject. And guys, the easiest way to think of a subject, who or what's doing the action? I did what? Arrow goes forward. Let's pass the ball forward. I did my homework. It answers the question, what? I did what? My homework. So this word, whoops, right here, that is your direct object. Okay, yet again, we look at this. Janet answered the question. Answered. Who answered? Janet. What did she answer? Arrow goes forward. She answered the question. That's our direct object. Okay, so it's going to be a noun or a pronoun. Okay, that follows the action verb and answers the question, what? I did what? My homework. Janet answered what? The question. Okay, we're going to skip number 3 for just a second. Let's look at number 4. Okay, number 4. Opening the door, Quentin found the cat and $5. Found. Who found? Subject, Quentin. What did he find? Let's pass that ball forward. He found the cat. Direct object. Okay. Quentin found what? $5. Arrow goes forward. Ball gets passed forward. Found what? $5. So we have two direct objects in this case, cat and dollars. Okay. Let's go back and look at number 3. Found what? Cat and dollars. Yeah. Megan and Carlos went to the store. Megan and Carlos went. Who went? Megan and Carlos. There are subjects. Where did they go? To the store. So football goes forward, right? Be careful. Look here. To the store is a prepositional phrase. Remember, prepositional phrases, guys, are those phrases that tell us when and where things happen. Remember the box thing? Anything a squirrel can do it to a box. He's on the box, in the box, walk to the box, by the box, under the box. Those are prepositions. So remember, our players will never be in prepositional phrases that tell us when and where things happen. So even though this is an action verb, this cannot be a direct object. Same thing down here. Look at number 5. After class, the halls were full of students. Verb, were. But were is not an action verb. So you can just go and stop right there. If there's no action verb, there can be no direct object. This is a linking verb. Is, are, was, were, will be. They're linking verbs almost 99% of the time. So you can just stop there. This can't be a direct object situation. Okay, so hopefully we understood direct objects. So we're going to move on and look at indirect objects. A couple of simple rules you need to know about indirect objects. First of all, do notice that they precede. That means they come before the direct object, and they will answer the question to whom or to what. Okay, something to keep in mind. For there to be an indirect object, there must first be an action verb. That's the first thing. Always keep that in mind. Like our players have to be on the same team. There must be an action verb and there must be a direct object. You'll notice from the slide before, there can be a direct object with no indirect object, but the opposite is not true. There cannot be an indirect object without a direct object. And notice, I cannot emphasize this enough, it will come before the direct object, and it will answer the questions to whom or to what. So if we're thinking about it again in the idea of an arrow, verb, right? Who does this, the verb, the subject, action verb. What did the Okay, so if we, sorry, I'm kind of botching that. So if the direct object answers the question what, did what direct object? So we pass the ball forward to the direct object. Then if we want to know to whom or what, we're going to pass it back to the indirect object. Let's look at an example and I think it'll be a little clearer. I gave my mother and sister some earrings. What's the verb? Gave. Who gave? Subject. What did I give? Let's pass that ball forward. I gave earrings. Remember, direct object answers the question what. I gave what earrings? Direct object. Now we can answer the question to whom? To whom or to what did I give the earrings? I gave the earrings, let's pass the ball backwards, to mother and sister. So these are our indirect objects. They receive the direct object. So if that's another way you could think about it, who or what receives the direct object? So if earrings is our direct object, I gave what earrings? Who received them? Sister and mother. They are our indirect objects. Let's look at number 3. We're going to skip number 2 for a second. Kevin and Marcy sent the company a check. Sent. Who sent? Kevin and Marcy. What did they send? Let's pass that ball forward. They sent the check. So here's our direct object, right? That answers the question what? Sent what? A check. Who or what received that check? Pass the ball backwards. The company. There's our indirect object. Okay? So indirect objects come before the direct object, and they answer the question basically who or what received the direct object. Who received the earrings? Mother and sister. Who received the check? The company. Okay? That's what indirect objects are. It's that simple. Look at number 2. She is my friend in New York. Verb is. Again, the point here, guys, stop. It can't be an indirect object. Why? Because is a linking verb. Is, are, was, were, will be. Okay, so you can just stop right there. None of this can be action verb, direct object or indirect object. Look at number 4. The policeman gave the ticket to me. Gave is our action verb. Who gave? Policeman. What did he give? Arrow forward, a ticket. Good shape so far. There's our direct object. Gave what? A ticket. Who received the direct object? The ticket. Me, right? So there's our indirect object. Careful. It does answer that question of who or what received the direct object. Who received the ticket? Me. But look up here. The indirect object must come before the direct object. Somehow I managed to move it. Okay, it must come before the direct object. This does not, it comes after. This is actually a prepositional phrase, to me, remember, to the box. So be careful, that's not an indirect object. Now, does it do the same thing? Answer who or what got the ticket? Yes, but it's not an indirect object because an indirect object must come before the direct object. This is a prepositional phrase instead. Even though it does the same thing, I understand that. It still answers that question. Now, if we wanted it to be, we could just say this, the policeman gave me the ticket. And magically, ta-da, it is a direct object or indirect object. Gave what? The ticket. To who? Me. And now it's before the direct object, so now this would actually be an indirect object. It does matter where it is. It cannot be in a prepositional phrase. That's just a prepositional phrase, even though they do the same thing. So keep that in mind. Okay, and one more we're going to look at with team action verb, and that is an object complement. An object complement is a little bit different. It is going to follow the direct object, and it is going to rename or describe it, okay? Do notice it is the only one that's a little different in that it can be a noun or an adjective, okay? Here's the formula. Subject, action verb, direct object, object complement. So the arrow goes forward from action verb to direct object, but then the arrow will also come backwards from object complement to direct object. Okay, so let's look at the first example. Notice too right here before I do that. These are the common verbs that go with it. Things like name, elect, call. She called me ugly. She called, right? Called who? Subject is she. Called who? Me. There's our direct object. Okay, I'll go ahead and mark that in yellow. This word that follows it, ugly. Who's ugly? It's me. It comes backwards and describes the direct object. That's an object complement. It will follow the direct object and it will, as you see up here, describe or rename it. Let's look at number 4. I'm just going to skip down so you can see a different example. They named the twins Barbara and Becky. Named. Who named? They. Who did they name? Or what did they name? The twins. So there's our direct object. I'm going to go ahead and mark that in yellow. The arrow went forward. Name the twins. What do Barbara and Becky do? That's our question. Well, that renames the twins. That gives you the names of the twins. So it comes back to describe or rename the direct object. That is an object complement. They follow the direct object in both cases, and they come backwards to describe in this case or rename in this case. Look at number 2. We elected Pete president. Elected. Who elected? We. Elected who? Pete. So there's our direct object. We elected Pete. Who's president? Well, Pete is. Again, it comes back and it renames or describes the direct object. It comes backwards. So we went forward to Pete. Elected who? Pete. Now president is coming backwards to describe or rename Pete. That's an object complement. Number 3, the soup is hot. Verb is stop. Remember this. These things only exist with action verbs. The soup is hot. Is the verb, but that's a linking verb. It cannot be an object complement. So just to refresh, guys, direct objects are pretty simple. They follow the action verb and answer the question what? We elected Pete. Elected who? Pete. Okay, so that's going to be your direct object. These other things, object complements and indirect objects, can't exist without a direct object. As we saw in the first slide, direct objects can exist alone. We could just make this sentence, we elected Pete. That would be fine. But the word that follows it, if it comes back to describe or rename, like Barbara and Becky renames twins, President describes Pete, ugly describes me, then that's an object complement. Up here to remember that indirect objects, they precede the direct object and answer who or what got their direct object. Okay, so down here, now that we fixed this one above, who got the ticket? Me. It comes backwards. It's before the direct object and answers who or what got the direct object. But remember, all of these things require there to be a direct object and it must be an action verb. All of these things are team action verb. If there's a linking verb, just stop. It can't be any of these things. These are all team action verb. If it's a linking verb, just stop. You're not dealing with any of these things. Okay, so hopefully we